Good evening. It is now past 6 o'clock here on April the 2nd, and I will call the Planning and Zoning Commission for the City of College Station, Texas to order. If everyone will please rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance with us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for that one bit of administration. For those of you that are trying to utilize the QR code on the screen, if it doesn't work the first time, please continue trying it. It will be up and running, so continue to try, and that will be able to get that going. Agenda item number 2 is hear visitors. At this time, we will open up the floor to visitors wishing to address the commission on issues not on tonight's agenda. We do have one person that has signed up to join, and please forgive me if I get this wrong. Caleb Eliabi has signed up to join or to speak. And if you will please state your name, address, and limit your comment to 3 minutes, please.
My name is Caleb El-Arabi. I live at 2200 Cottage Lane in College Station, Texas. I just wanted to come here today to talk to y'all about an event that we're going to be throwing as College Station A&M students. So hi everyone, I'm Caleb. I am a student undergrad at Texas A&M University, and we are going to be hosting a community fair on April 26th. We will be offering a lot of free services like blood pressure checks, heart checkups, eye exams, dental exams, and free vaccinations because we have partnered with the Texas A&M College of Medicine and the Texas A&M College of Nursing. And we would also like to kind of show our community members a lot of resources that they might not be aware of. So for instance, we are going to be having workforce solutions. We'll have the Aggieland Pregnancy Outreach, and we'll have like 211 Texas and a wide variety of others that will be in attendance to show our community members what resources, free and low-cost resources are available to them that they might not be aware of. So yeah, that will be April 26th on Sunday from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. at St. Joseph's Catholic Church in downtown Bryan. And we hope to see you all there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. No one else has signed up to speak during Hear Visitors. Is there anyone else that would like to speak now on agenda items not on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, we will move on to agenda item 3, the consent agenda. The only item on there is 3.1, minutes from our February 19th meeting. Is there any discussion on that, or do we have a motion?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That has passed. Thank you, gentlemen. We will move on to agenda item 5. And for those that are following in the on our schedule, we will adjust tonight's schedule and moving some items up and moving 5.2 down. 5.1 is a presentation, discussion, and possible action regarding a discretionary item to the Unified Development Ordinance, Section 8.4.C.4.B, adequate street access, and presentation, discussion, and possible action regarding a final plat for the Lakeside Milliken Reserve Phase 5 on approximately 8.25 acres, generally located in the city's extraterritorial jurisdiction north of the intersection of Welborn Road and Milliken Creek. Mr. Seagraves.
Good evening, Commissioners. Garrett Seagraves, Planning and Development Services. As you said, tonight's request is to approve a final plat for Lakeside and Milliken Reserve subdivision. This plat is the second of 8 phases and is proposing 29 single-family lots. It includes a discretionary item from Section 8.4.C.4, adequate street access. Per this section, the Commission may allow remote access when a second external street connection is not provided on the plat. This plat is proposing a temporary public access easement on Lot 11 of Block 6 here. This is required due to this phase and the previous phase totaling in 55 single-family lots, which exceeds the minimum 30 lots required for one external street connection. Staff is recommending approval of the plat and the discretionary item, and I'm available for any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Seagraves?
What's the average lot size, do you know? 8 acres, 25?
The total plat acreage is 8.25 acres. I do not know the exact number for each individual lot.
Any other questions? This is not scheduled for a public hearing, so if there are no other questions, I will move to the will of the commission.
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second on this. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Again, for those following on, if you have the agenda, we are moving 5.2 down to 5.4. We will then move on to 5.3, which is a public hearing, presentation, discussion, and possible action regarding an ordinance amending the comprehensive plan by amending the thoroughfare plan and bicycle pedestrian greenways master plan to remove the future extension of Pebble Creek Parkway, a minor arterial between St. Andrews Drive and the future minor arterial to the south, including associated future bike lanes and sidewalks. Mr. Armstrong.
Good evening, Commission. Anthony Armstrong, Director of Planning Development Services. Tonight's request might be a little new to the Commission, given the process. I'm going to go over some background real quick, but the item on the agenda is for the removal of Pebble Creek Parkway, the extension to the south between Pebble Creek and through the animate habitat track over off to Southern Point. How we got to this item this evening: back in July and August of last year, a few of you were members of the Comprehensive Plan Evaluation Committee, along with some members of council. During that process, towards the end of that process, some residents got together and noticed that the extension of Pebble Creek Parkway was on the city's master plan, reached out to the city, learned some information about that, and ultimately started a dialogue with their city council members and expressed some opposition to the thoroughfare being on the plan. Come circa August 14th of 2025, there was a future agenda item that was requested by the City Council to discuss kind of the history and the background of Pebble Creek Parkway at that time. That workshop was held on September 25th. That workshop was just a workshop, so there was no action taken there. It doesn't go to P&Z, it's just a workshop item requested by Council. At that item, Council directed staff to go back and come back with options to them on what the thoroughfare plan would look like if Pebble Creek was not extended, and they talked about, they want to know some alternatives, what might be needed in that instance, and we'll go over that in a little bit here. From that day, the thoroughfare plan process was started by staff. Part of that is a consultant traffic study was enacted, as well as a technical review by staff over the process. As well, there's the Bicycle Pedestrian Greenways Board had to hear this item. They heard it this week on March 30th. We had a public meeting here at City Hall to talk about the information I'll present to you tonight, as well on March 24th. That was a public meeting presented from staff and an opportunity for questions afterwards. And there was some dialogue back and forth with residents. We had some poster boards, et cetera. And then 30th, BPG heard the item. At that meeting, they did recommend to keep the thoroughfare on, so they recommend denial of the request 7-1 in favor of keeping the road on the thoroughfare plan. Tonight, we're here at April 2nd for the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, and then April 9th will be the City Council. That's next Thursday. Again, what we're talking about on the left is kind of an existing section that we showed for the BPG members. Again, talks about the bike lane, the sidewalks. What you see there is a cross section. And then again, on the right is really what we're talking about. There's the current terminus of Pebble Creek Parkway, where you see it go down the Gulf States Utility Corridor. And ultimately, the request tonight is for your recommendation on should this road continue or not. Again, the role of P&Z when it comes to comprehensive plan amendments is restricted in theory to a couple of criteria. Ultimately, the comprehensive plan talks about that it should not be amended it should only be amended based on change or changing conditions in particular areas or in the area or in our city. Additionally, the review criteria that P&Z and Council are to review is Is there a change or changing condition in the subject area of the city? This is in your staff report as well. Is the compatibility with existing uses, development patterns, and character of the immediate area concerned in general area and the city as a whole? Impacts on environmentally sensitive and natural areas, impacts on infrastructure, water, sewer, streets, drainage, and is it consistent with the strategy set forth in the comprehensive plan? Ultimately, the request tonight is relatively simple as far as what it does to the map. There's currently a line on the map to remove Pebble Creek as its future minor arterial classification between Pebble Creek Parkway, or the current terminus along St. Andrews or Adelaide area, down to where it would eventually connect to a street that would go through the proposed Savannah Oaks property to the south. There is some discussion that was had at that same meeting back in September. The CPEC had an item in that report that talked about taking Pebble Creek from a 4-lane road, which is a minor arterial, to a 2-lane road, which is a major collector. That item is coming forward as well. That'll come forward with the CPEC. When we package all of those things from the CPEC report together, they will all come at one time. That was given, the council already said go ahead and do that. That item is coming forward in case there's any confusion about that. But tonight is just about, does the road extend or not? The road's already 2 lanes. We'll get into that a little bit more here in a little bit. Going back, sorry, not going back yet. So if it's removed, there's a couple of options that would kind of look at alternatives or alternatives that have been mentioned. The biggest conversation has been about emergency vehicle access only. So in order to do that, there is no thoroughfare plan designation that says you're an emergency vehicle only lane. That doesn't exist. Thoroughfare plans they go down to what's called a minor collector. You've got minor, major collectors, minor, major arterials, and then we even have freeways and super streets on our thoroughfare plan for larger roadways like Highway 6 or Wilburn Road, things like that. So in order to do an emergency vehicle access, there is no designation that the city can require that. The only way that could be done is if we did a development agreement with the property owners to the south. So they would have to voluntarily enter into this development agreement with the city. They'd have to want to be into this development agreement. We'd have to come to terms. Ultimately, if they were going to build it, the other alternative is that the city could build that requirement if that's the option that council so wishes. That's about half a mile of road that would have to be constructed. It wouldn't be a full road, but it does have to still be a bridge cross-section. It has to be elevated because it does go over floodplain property, just like a normal bridge, because obviously in an emergency situation, if it's flooding, you need to be able to get there. So it would have to be an elevated bridge section. It'd be the same thing. It'd be a lot of cost for the use when it's needed for emergency vehicles. The other alternative constantly talked about is a additional fire station. So we could do Fire Station 8 in this area. Ultimately, Southern Point is not part of the city, so with that, Southern Point is not served by the city for fire services. They're not required to be served by fire services. There are ILAs with our surrounding partners, and so obviously there is coordination that happens there. But ultimately, there could be a need for Fire Station 8 if there is not this connection, and Chief Mann is here, and he'll talk about that towards the end of the presentation. Additionally, the city, there's been a lot of talks about Lakeway as an alternative, and we'll go over some of that data here in a second. Lakeway doesn't actually exist to the subject tract that is the Savannah Oaks tract to the south of Pebble Creek. There's an area of land about 1,500 feet long that is actually owned currently by Pebble Creek's development company that would either have to be purchased by them, done by eminent domain by the city to construct that, or a development agreement with that property owner to extend this road for them if they're not going to do it, if we were going to force that ahead of schedule. And again, that would be construction of about a little under half a mile of roadway to get there. Additionally, if let's say in the future there is some need that happens 20, 30 years from now, or we say, hey, we need this connection back, that could happen. That is something that 20, 30 years from now, as this area develops, council could say, hey, we should add this back. It's needed now. All of that would then be the city's responsibility. The benefit to the thoroughfare plan is that it's a long-range plan that lets everybody know what we're on the same page on. As development comes in, they're required to do certain aspects of that thoroughfare plan. So currently, that would be built by the developer, not by the city. Additionally, we'll talk about the study here, the traffic analysis that was done. It does point out that there might be need for future improvements along Lakeway. So if you remove Pebble Creek, Lakeway basically becomes the end-all, do-all for your north and south movements not on the frontage road or not on Highway 6. And so there's talk in the report about you might need to monitor that section of roadway for intersection improvements, maybe even widenings in the future to help accommodate traffic needs and expectations. Talking about the history of Pebble Creek Parkway, so back in 1991, actually, we worked with Pebble Creek to come up with a master plan. So back in the day, the city didn't have preliminary plans that you're familiar with today. We had what's called master plans. I'll show you the master plan here in a second. As part of that master plan, the development company had to conduct the traffic impact analysis. In essence, from that analysis, it showed that they showed different road layouts and what they needed to support their development. This excerpt is from the report, but it basically talks about that. I'll read the first section. It talks about that there is a need for an arterial between State Highway 6 and Rock Prairie Road, which is at least 10,000 feet apart. So between where Fitch hits Highway 6, and then where you go, where Fitch hits Highway 6 and Rock Prairie Road, that's way too far to not have additional thoroughfare connectivity between it. This was identified even back in 1992, and as such, it was added to this is the original functional classification and projected traffic volumes for Pebble Creek. You can see they projected about 10,500 vehicles per day at the entrance of what's called Greens Prairie Road. That's actually William D. Fitch today. But that's that intersection up there. You can see, by and large, this layout has been followed for the development of Pebble Creek. Certainly some things that have shifted over time, minor residential streets, which are there in the green. But ultimately, you can see there's a blue line, and unfortunately, the podium doesn't work today, but you can see there's a blue line dashed hanging out from the bottom of this projection that crosses Allen Creek. That is Pebble Creek Parkway's future that was planned as part of the original development back in 1992. Again, here's a copy of the master plan that was on file at that time when we first did this, and just shows kind of when we first worked with the developer to lay out the entirety of Pebble Creek. This is what that looked like. You can see there's things off on the east side, which are currently starting to get developed. For the most part, most of the stuff in the interior, the main section of Pebble Creek has been completed. Handful of homes are still being kind of finished out as we speak. So with that, again, that was in 1992. In 97, this is a copy of the city's thoroughfare plan. In that report that I showed you earlier, that section talks about where does Pebble Creek terminus happen, so where does Pebble Creek end up at the end of the day was talked about. It talks about either going straight down the corridor and aligning with Pipeline Road or veering off and going towards Peach Creek Road, which is, if Rock Prairie, you stay on that road and continues, it turns into Peach Creek. Ultimately in 97, that's the option that was chosen for where the thoroughfare would end up. You then get to today. This is the current thoroughfare plan, which still shows the same pathway. And so you see Pebble Creek Parkway outlined there. And in essence, most of these roads have stayed the exact same since 97 when we started this process. There's been a lot of talk about neighborhood integrity as well as part of the comprehensive plan and kind of what that means in this regards. And so, again, when we talk about neighborhood integrity, we talk about it in Chapter 3, Strong Neighborhoods of the comprehensive plan. We say neighborhoods should capitalize on what sets them apart from other neighborhoods while creating a seamless transition between different housing types and adjacent land uses. We then also go on to say that one of the biggest concerns is the location and role major thoroughfares have on neighborhoods. It then goes on to talk about in older neighborhoods it is integrated into the network where thoroughfares are, and that in newer neighborhoods we have several cul-de-sacs, longer stretches of residential roads, and less thoroughfare activity within them, and it basically calls them negative. Goes on to say, which causes difficulties when distributing traffic volumes or providing alternative paths to major points of interest throughout the city. We'll cover that some more in a second. And then lastly, we talk about new residential subdivision and neighborhood planning within the city. We say new residential subdivisions should be designed to fit within the existing fabric of the community. Connectivity in and around neighborhoods should be encouraged to help disperse traffic rather than funnel it into one or two major roads. With this request, it would take what is two roads coming south over a 2.5 mile period to just one over a 2.5 mile period of the city. In essence, creating multiple islands of communities within the city of College Station, which our comprehensive plan shies us against. To get into the analysis that was performed, we talked about four major things. This was the information that was also presented on what we found last Tuesday at that meeting. We talked about roadway capacity, so that was the study done by the consultant. We talked about traffic congestion. I'll get into that a little bit more, but that's some feedback from different citizen surveys we've done, as well as kind of analyzing what the traffic, the capacity analysis gave us. We'll talk about functional connectivity. So what does the ordinance say? What does the comp plan say about how we should be developing our thoroughfare system? And then ultimately, Chief Mann will wrap us up with some public safety and ultimately services. Our transportation system is utilized by trash trucks, et cetera, also, as well, to also make sure that we're being efficient with the uses of our taxpayer resources. So I'm going to show you a handful of maps. These are all in the packet along with that. And so I'm going to show you 3 different scenarios and then a comparison. So this is a volume to capacity ratio. So what it looks at, in essence, your 2-lane road, it says that about 15,000 cars can travel on it. This map shows in a percentage, more or less, each decimal point would be a percentage of capacity used. So when you look at this, as you get above 67% of your capacity used, it triggers into what's called nearing congestion, and then something that is red would be something that is at or past a heavily congested street. It doesn't necessarily mean that the road is braking, is the term that I've been using. It just means that you're going to have significant slow, almost a grid-like type pattern. And the more and more you get over a 1, the more unusable really that gets for a part of your efficient system. So this analysis is to look at the thoroughfare plan by just taking scenario 1 was as is. Scenario 2 that you see on the screen here was taking Pebble Creek down to a 2-lane road, again, as was already discussed. So this shows kind of our existing condition, if you will, on where we're starting at. We then go to scenario 3. We took off the extension of Pebble Creek Parkway, and then you see what the analysis does there. Obviously, if you're not connecting into Pebble Creek, the volumes would go down. They wouldn't be the same because you're not having any connection there. We'll show a chart in a second about connections going back and forth. This does contribute more traffic onto Lakeway. You can see that a couple of segments turned more orange, and additional traffic volumes went up there. The blue line is the areas that were removed as part of this analysis. The northern section, just for the record, really, as some of you might know, council's in the process of working through a baseball idea with a developer. While we had this contract underway, we went ahead and just ran that analysis, really just to save 2 birds, 1 stone. And so if they decide to move forward with that, it's already kind of in the books. But it has no effect on the system for the rest of this request. This map shows the deltas in between the 2 scenarios. So this is comparing scenario 2 with Pebble Creek there, the extension, and scenario 3 with it removed. Basically, in scenario 2, if the road remains, there's 9,500 cars that would be going up and down that segment of Pebble Creek. It's hard to see from this image. You can see it well in your packet. But as you go through the segments, cars obviously bleed off to go to either their houses or go elsewhere. You've got people going both directions down this roadway. So people are going into Savannah Oaks, they're going into Pebble Creek, and vice versa. So you can see when out Burkdale, there's a anticipated gain. If you don't have Pebble Creek Parkway, more people will be exiting out Burkdale. And you obviously have a lot of significant traffic on the roads that were in the Savannah Oaks, Southern Point area, getting over to Highway 6. The one thing on this analysis that we then went into a 4th analysis on is you can see on the right-hand side there's a road that reaches up to Pebble Creek or to Rock Prairie Road, which has been talked about as a potential alternative. There's a lot of issues with that alternative. For one, that entirety of that road is actually located in the city's ETJ. As you guys will be familiar with, there was recently annexation. There's ETJ laws that were recently passed that you can just opt out of the ETJ. You are then not subject to any regulations by the city. You're totally at the subject of the county. And every bit of that road is outside of the city limits to get it to Rock Prairie Road. There is obviously a large amount of land between the city limit lines and that, but that is Lick Creek Park. So you can't put roads through parkland. That's not the use of parkland roads or the use of parkland property. And so that alternative, in our minds, is very unreliable and probably not likely to happen. So this really is what, if you remove Pebble Creek Parkway, what are you expecting the system to really look like at the end of the day is scenario 4. As you can see, and this is what I mentioned earlier, Lakeway has several segments that turn red. And again, the report says that from a technical standpoint, it doesn't mean that it's broken, so it's not going to be some crazy elaborate system, but it's a part of the puzzle that we put together when we talk about our technical recommendation. It does have negative impacts on the transportation system and likely has a need for city capital projects in the future to alleviate those concerns. Another piece of this study is traffic congestion. So these word clouds here are from a study done by the city in 2019. It was a survey of residents where we talked about what are your biggest concerns across the city. So the first one is what should be our highest priority. By and large, and as you guys are familiar from different reports we've done over the years, traffic congestion and traffic are the biggest things we always hear in all of our citizen surveys. Again, if you could change one thing about College Station, what would it be? The number one thing by and large is traffic. We do these reports on a regular basis. So you can see in the bottom left, it asks how would you rate the quality of road congestion in the city. In 2012, we were at 50%. Not too great, but not necessarily terrible. As we look at 2025, we're at 21%. So only 21% of our population thinks we're doing a good job about traffic congestion and traffic mitigation. But they say that 98% of them say it's the most important. So there's a pretty large gap there between how good our quality is and how important this is to our system. Again, when I talk about those charts from earlier, those percentages represent how much capacity that roadway has, but it doesn't necessarily talk about what the expectation of a citizen is. So most of those roads on there, if you drove them at a max capacity, you would not like what you found. You would be part of this crowd. When we look at that, if you imagine traveling on Holloman Drive between Texas Avenue and Welborn Road, that's about how much traffic would be in a peak hour scenario. Think 5 o'clock rush hour. That's what you would be expecting on Lakeway if you remove Pebble Creek. So while it doesn't break the system down, it does have a significant impact on how people feel about their traffic patterns in the city. Additionally, in those surveys, we asked them how well do you think we're managing traffic, or how important is the management of traffic overall across the entire city, including the areas we're talking about, so that it was very important, the highest rating. And then how would you rate how well we're doing? They say that we're below average across the entire city as well. So I'm going to talk about functional connectivity, and what I mean by this is how do we look from a planning perspective to actually outlay neighborhoods and outlay the city. Obviously, back in the day, you think original cities, there's a very grid-like pattern, right? You think downtown Bryan, you think Northgate, you think these areas that are very box-like structures. Of course, over time, different theories arose on how you should develop your neighborhoods, and we got different products that have resulted from that. However, arterial roadways from a macro level, when we talk about moving cars around places, in between neighborhoods, things like that, about every 1 mile you want to have an arterial roadway. Again, pointing back to that study that the developer did back in 1991, they identified there was a need for an additional major roadway through this section. About every half mile you're looking to have a collector roadway, so think a little bit smaller, more connecting neighborhoods together of a type of roadway, which is what we're moving Pebble Creek to be. It would be a major collector roadway. That's about every half mile. At a micro level, when we talk about residential streets, we have what's called block length. You guys would be familiar with block length. That's typically a waiver that's brought forth to the commission. Block length is 1,200 feet. So again, right around about a quarter mile. And that's for residential streets. You want connectivity so you're not having to walk a long period of time before you have to turn around or go a different way or ride your bike or even just drive your car. If you have to go a long ways and you need to turn around or something like that. So this is, you look through most neighborhoods throughout town, this is how we look to develop residential streets from a micro level. When you talk about this block at the end of Pebble Creek Parkway, if you take from Highway 6 all the way over to Rock Prairie Road, that's about 2.5 miles. And with the connection today, there are only 2 macro level connections planned for that area. There are 0 micro connections in that area. So there are no residential streets. There are only 2 planned thoroughfare roads in between State Highway 6 and Rock Prairie Road, and this would be taking that down to 1 over a 2.5 mile period versus 5 that should be there. We talk about connectivity as well in the comprehensive plan in chapter 6, chapter 6. And so we say that poor street connectivity can degrade the overall efficiency of mobility system as trips are funneled to fewer corridors and may cause the need for more substantial improvements. Basically, as we remove these connections throughout the system, more and more cars, as the city continues to grow, have to funnel into less and less places, which creates bottlenecks, creates issues. The city might be required to put in a turn signal, for instance, as is going at Pebble Creek Parkway and Fitch. We might need to put in right turn lanes. We might need to come back and do additional capital projects to alleviate some of those concerns. And with that, I'll invite the fire chief up here to kind of talk through the analysis that they did from a fire perspective.
Good evening, Richard Mann, Fire Chief. For us, this is a fairly simple concern or issue. We're in a business, obviously, where public safety response times are a critical component of being able to deliver effective service. And in that, minutes and seconds make a difference in patient outcomes and property loss. So we analyzed what it would look like for us to be able to serve the Savannah Oaks community with and without Pebble Creek Parkway, and looking at some various models for how we could do that. We looked at 5 different routes as options. One, obviously, being with Pebble Creek Parkway as it's proposed. The second being with Lakeway Extension. The third being using the existing roadways on the Highway 6 frontage road. The fourth option was using, as Anthony mentioned, the extension off of Rock Prairie Road. And then the fifth option was looking at using the St. Andrews and Burkdale extension option. So for those, response time is really, total response time is a component of 3 different parts. The first 2 parts are unaffected by this roadway. The first part is call processing time. That's the amount of time from the time a 911 call is placed. The dispatcher answers that phone, answers or asks a few questions, and then basically hits the button to activate the emergency alerting system at the fire station and dispatch the call. We use NFPA standards. It's the National Fire Protection Association Standard 1710 that dictates the ideal response time and our response time goals. For call processing, that time is 90 seconds, and we have an accredited dispatch center that meets those standards. The second component is from the time the lights come on at the fire station and the alerting system dispatches the call until the fire truck is actually rolling out the door. And the NFPA standard calls for a maximum of 80 seconds for the firefighters to get to the apparatus, get their gear on, and be rolling out the door. And then the third, and that is also unaffected by the extension of Pebble Creek Parkway. But the fourth component is, and that is travel time. And that is the time it takes from once you're rolling out the door until you arrive on scene. And to do that, it's a fairly simple math equation, because we use a validated equation that's used. It's called the Rand Institute Travel Time Equation, and it is an equation that's used by the Insurance Services Organization to determine our ISO classification. And it takes into account a wide variety of conditions, fire emergency response. Obviously it accounts for some roadways being quicker than others, going through intersections, a wide variety of conditions. And really we use this one formula, and it's, again, what the ISO uses. And so we measure the distance out in miles and input that into the formula, and it gives us the travel time. So when we did the analysis on all 4 of these, or all 5 of these routes, we looked in particular at 4 specific points in Pebble Creek. Point A is really the point that's already there. It's the end of the current existing Pebble Creek Parkway. Really what we were looking at is a response time to B, C, and D. And those areas, and in particular, Area C in the proposed development, Area C is probably going to be more multi-family, some light residential, light commercial, as it is proposed. That is actually a little less concern to me, because by code, we can mandate sprinkler systems in those buildings. And so that's definitely an enhancement for fire safety. But areas B and D are single-family residential. That B and D constitute about 2,000 single-family residential homes that cannot be mandated to have sprinklers. And so those are the areas that are most concerning to us in our response time to those areas. And as you can see, is it on the next slide? These were the analysis of our 5 models that we used, and very clearly total response time using Pebble Creek Parkway extension, especially to those areas we're most concerned with B and D, about those 2,000 residential homes, was clearly better if we had the Pebble Creek Parkway as an extension to use that from the existing Fire Station 5. So that is basically the analysis we did using existing resources and being able to service that area.
So again, that kind of concludes, again, staff looked at all those different items to put together a technical recommendation on this item. Again, the request before you tonight is simply to take off the connection between St. Andrews and the proposed development in Savannah Oaks. As a reminder, here's the criteria that P&Z is supposed to review as part of their criteria for making a recommendation. Again, yours is a recommendation off to council. The BPG board heard this earlier this week where they voted 7-1 to keep the thoroughfare on the thoroughfare plan. Again, staff's recommendation is for denial of this request to see the thoroughfare stay on the map. Staff, the technical analysis has various points to it. There is no silver bullet, right? There's not one piece of this puzzle that says this is a silver bullet, why this is needed. It's a combination of efforts. There are certainly alternatives, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. There are alternatives or things that can be done if this is removed. Those all cost money, and those cost time and energy. There's a matter of when and how, who's going to fund that, is it needed? Also, when we talk about things like a fire station, when we planned out the other 7 fire stations, this thoroughfare plan has been there. And so when we plan for fire stations, when we plan for things across the city, the entire city uses this master plan. It's not just Planning Development Services. All of our departments across the city, including the fire and police departments, utilize these thoroughfare plans to identify where they might need to put their resources and put their facilities. And so changes to this might mean that we should have put Fire Station 7 somewhere else, because it would have made more sense to be closer to an area if we weren't going to have these connections. Again, remember that just because there's a fire station in a certain area, fire stations are constantly going out and making calls. If that fire station is on call, another station is there to pick up the slack. And so that other station has to come from somewhere. So even if there is a fire station done in Savannah Oaks or Southern Point in the future, Station 5 still needs that ability to respond to the area in a timely manner in the event of an emergency. With that, I'll conclude the presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions from the commission. There are a number of residents signed up to speak. Real quick, as far as contacts, we've obviously gotten a lot of contacts against this, or for this request to remove the extension. We have actually gotten several contacts, though, in favor of keeping the road and denial of this request. We held a public meeting, again, like I mentioned, on the 24th. There was 23 citizens who attended that. It was really just an informational setting. We did get 3 comment cards left, and 1 comment card was actually in favor of the road extending through to the end. I think you did receive a couple of written comments today as well from individuals that we forwarded to you before the meeting of people who also were in support of the road extension going through. And with that, happy to answer any questions.
I will start down to my far left.
Anthony, could you give me a better idea as to the impact, when you did the study, the impact on Fitch? In other words, if you're funneling, I think that it was 9,500 cars that are going to be going in and turning left, heading to 6, I assume that's where the flow would go. You're going to, what's going to be the impact on Fitch?
At what location? At Lakeway or at Pebble Creek Parkway?
Well, first of all, Pebble Creek Parkway, that you're, and then alternatively, Lakeway, is that seems like just logistically that they're looking at that's going to create a tremendous bottleneck. Any way we go, but
sure. So
relative to the 2 alternatives.
Right, and so this map is in your packet. I don't know if you can see it better on your screen, but when you look at those 9,500 cars are going both directions. So that's people in Pebble Creek going down to Savannah Oaks. As Chief mentioned, the frontage along Highway 6 will be commercial products is the plan. So there will likely be commercial businesses, things like that in there that people in Pebble Creek would go and visit, or they might go visit their friends that live in Savannah Oaks. And so there will be cars going up and down both directions. When you look at as you go up Pebble Creek Parkway towards Fitch, you go from that 9,500 number, that's how many are in that segment of road. It goes to, it's like 11,000 and some change at the intersection there. And then if you remove Pebble Creek, it's about 7,400. It's a difference of about 4,000 cars, basically, that would hit the intersection of Pebble Creek Parkway and Fitch. Again, there's actually a project going on right now with TxDOT to put a signal in at that location. So that does improve the mobility through that intersection. As far as the Lakeway, obviously as you're putting more traffic constantly, I don't know if you can read that, I cannot, and I don't know if Jason's got numbers on them, but certainly with scenario 4, we can go look at that map, but yes, they would put more cars there. There is already a signal at Lakeway. That does help a little bit. But again, it's when the report talks about there might be needed for system improvements along the Lakeway corridor if there is no Pebble Creek connection.
Thank you.
Down to my far right first.
So yeah, if we do keep it, will this displace any of the current residents?
No.
All right. Will it raise their property value?
It won't have, I mean, it would probably
won't
raise
affect
our
it?
property value.
So
we-
it won't affect it?
No.
All right, and it will decrease it? Oh, okay.
Yeah, you can talk, I'm not a real estate attorney, but you can talk to real estate professionals. They would actually probably say it would increase it.
Got you, all right.
Great.
So, and
please
would
keep
it
the
stop
quorum.
any extracurricular activities that children are participating in, like riding their bikes or playing basketball or anything like that?
It will not. The roadway is already a thoroughfare through that section of Pebble Creek. There are no houses that front onto Pebble Creek. That's for a reason. This road has always been planned since the beginning to continue. That's why there's not a single house that fronts onto Pebble Creek Parkway.
Thank you.
The first criteria that we look at is, have there been substantial changes to the area or conditions that would merit removal? And to the best of staff's knowledge, there haven't been any subsequent changes since the 1992 plan was developed?
Correct.
Okay. And for Chief Mann, if I read those numbers correctly, for those 2,000 houses served by B&D, is that an increased travel time of somewhere around 50% in response time just based on the traffic part? I looked at the numbers really quickly, and that looks like just the travel time is about a 50% improvement or increase in travel time without that? Okay, thank you.
And forgive me for not necessarily knowing this, where is Fire Station 8 proposed to be?
There is no proposal for
There-
fire
and-
station.
But that's, okay, that's where I was confused on.
If it was not there, there's
that
been a
would-
conversation on that would be a need.
There would be a need for
Right.
it. That's where, okay, that's where my confusion was coming in. Without that, there would have to be initial conversations about a new fire station.
Sooner rather than later. There's a high likelihood we would need one regardless in the future at some
Correct.
point as the city continues to grow, but it becomes a timing conversation. So the current fire station is an $18 million project. We might need a fire station in 20, 25 years as the city continues to grow out, but that'll have a cost with it as well. Ultimately, when we're talking about this, it's a matter of timing.
Chief
Yeah,
Mayor.
and I think a good way to look at that timing was Pebble Creek Parkway, or Pebble Creek itself. I think, as I learned here, the plat was developed in 1992. We didn't build Station 5 until 2005, so about a 13-year gap from the time Pebble Creek began to be built out until that station was built. There may be a time down the road, especially if we annex the Southern Point area, that may be it may be a need in the future, but it may be a lot further out if we had Pebble Creek Parkway than sooner rather than later. So.
Chief Mann, Anthony threw out a number really quickly. What is the typical cost of a fire station? So if we do have to build another one, what's
So our
currently?
current bond was for $18 million. The station itself was about $12 million. We've got a couple $1 million worth of apparatus, land acquisition, and then, but really the ongoing cost of staffing it is the real cost. So it's about $2.5 million a year to staff a fire station around the clock.
So that's manpower, O&M,
Correct.
Vehicle maintenance.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you, sir.
Anthony, was there anyone else scheduled to speak before we do the public hearing?
Nope.
Did anybody else have any questions for Anthony or the rest of staff?
Yeah, I've got one. Andrew, would you go to scenario 3? Would there be, so if the extension was taken off, clearly Lakeway, there would be areas of Lakeway that would not be sufficient for traffic, correct?
Correct.
Would there be, is there a suggestion to increase the size of Lakeway?
In
More traffic?
the analysis, it talks about as the city continues to grow, there's not an immediate need for there to be an expansion of Lakeway, but it is a plausible need in the future we'd have to analyze as the city continues to grow. So it's kind of it really is teetering on that boundary on, can it stay in its current cross-section, or do we need to go back there and actually add additional lanes for capacity? And again, this is from a purely technical, 15,000 cars can go on this road in a reasonable manner. That is not a citizen feel version of that road. So when you look at the top of the screen, there are several roads that we just redid as capital projects just to make sure that we're in that under 50% metric in the future condition. And so Rock Prairie Road at the top of the page there, you can see breaks down to be in the mid 40s from a percentile, and we're doing capital projects that the citizens voted on as part of a bond to make that happen. So there is a clear expectation, as again with the studies and surveys under the community, that that level of traffic congestion is not acceptable to them.
Would you say that the increase in the capacity for Lakeway would cause less damage to the local neighborhoods?
Would an increase in the capacity? I mean, I think it depends on what your end goal is.
Well, the end goal would be to move traffic.
Right, and so, but there's still response times. If you're moving traffic, sure, again, this is one part of a multifaceted puzzle. There is no silver bullet. There's no one, aha, I got you moment that anyone's gonna have on this. Yes, you could expand Lakeway, you're gonna need to build Lakeway, it doesn't exist. You might need to do intersection improvements on Lakeway, and that just means those are more expedited projects needed by the city and the taxpayers to make that happen.
So under the current structure, the only way that extension gets built is if a developer puts forth the money to build it, and that will be required if they're going to develop it. If we take this off the thoroughfare plan that's needed in the future, that will be a cost to the city and the taxpayers?
Correct.
Any other questions? And I'm sure we may have some later, Anthony, so don't go anywhere. Again, this is scheduled for a public hearing. I am going to open the public hearing in just a second, but I will ask, as I know that this is a very passionate subject for everyone, if we could keep our comments and reactions to as much of a minimum as possible, we would greatly appreciate that. I will now open the public hearing. Our secretary has let us know that we do have people that have decided to speak and have signed up. I will ask that you, and tonight we will keep that a very strict 3 minutes. The mic will cut off after that 3 minutes because we do have plenty of people that want to speak. That being said, I will call up our first person, and that is Miss Elaine Meadows. And for Ms. Meadows and everyone that does come to speak, can you please state your name and your address for the record?
Yes, my name's Elaine Meadows, and I'm at 1311 Quarry Oaks Drive, and that's in the Pebble Creek subdivision. I am, as I said, I live in the Pebble Creek subdivision, and I also am a golfer at the Pebble Creek Golf Course. And as you know, if you look at the map that I brought here, there are two areas that golfers must cross Pebble Creek Parkway to complete an 18-hole round of golf. And I asked our golf course professional, how many rounds of golf did we have last year at our golf course? And we had 34,000 rounds of golf. So that means there's 34,000 individuals that are going to have to cross that parkway 2 times. That's a huge, looming, serious safety problem that's going to occur if this expansion goes into effect. And it's also going to affect the golf course viability. It's going to create such an unsafe situation that I would fear for the golf course's continued existence. Maybe you're not a golfer, maybe you don't care about golf, but there are a lot of people that do, and this is the only golf course in College Station. We do a lot of things for non-members. I don't think you're aware of them all. We promote the golf course, the golf clubs at the 3 local high schools. We let them practice there, play there, have tournaments there without charging them, without making them be members. We have a very successful Operations 36. It's a national program for youths in the summertime. Hundreds of kids have gone through it. And you do not have to be a member to do that. This golf course serves the community in so many ways. We have 20 charity golf tournaments for charities that are in this community. And if you take these things away, you're going to take away something that is extremely a valuable asset in College Station. So you're prioritizing the safety of the golfers and the people that utilize the golf course over another group, and it doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't. There's other alternatives than to do this to Pebble Creek Parkway and put 9,500 cars a day down that parkway. You don't need to do that. Also, I would like to know what number 7 fire station is supposed to be doing for that area that you keep talking about, Savannah Oaks and Southern Point and everything. We spent, you know, many millions of dollars to put that down there to specifically take care of the needs of South College Station. So I haven't seen that brought up at all, either by the fire department or by Andrew. So I think there's a lot of questions that we have about these things. You know, sometimes things look real good on paper, and Andrew did a good job of making it look that way. But I think sometimes it doesn't work out that way in real life. So I think you should think about what you're going to give up when you give up the golf course on Pebble Creek.
Excuse me. Next up to speak, Ken Grace.
Well, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Commission members, for, excuse me, letting us share our concerns with you tonight and on this issue. First of all...
And I'm sorry, if you could just state your name and address.
First of all, I'll state my name and address.
Thank you.
My name is Ken Grace. My wife and I live at 5307 Ballybunion Court in the Pebble Creek subdivision. So let's talk about things. Things have changed. You know, in 30 years, things have changed in Pebble Creek. It's actually become a viable golf course community. You know, people ride golf carts around the community. Kids ride bikes. You know, really, I have to say that that's not going to affect any of that or any of the many walkers I see when I go out walking every morning, that's quite an exaggeration, I think. I mean, it's a hopeful one, but I think there'd be quite an impact. As far as the golf course goes, yes, you're talking about I also spoke to the golf course manager, and we're talking about between 600 and 800 crossings per day by golfers across Pebble Creek Parkway. Now, if we do the extension, as Anthony explained, we're talking minimally about 9,500 cars crossing that extension, but it's not going to decrease as it goes down. If you look at the map, it actually increases. You're talking about 11,700 cars as you get closer to Fitch. Now, let's consider one other thing that might have been maybe an accidental misstatement earlier. Anthony made it sound, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, sir, but it made it sound as if we don't extend Pebble Creek, then gosh, we're going to have to spend all this money to try to extend Lakeway, and that's going to be expensive. But you know what? All those traffic analyses included extending Lakeway. If you look at the maps, Lakeway is extended on those maps. Okay? So if we remove Lakeway and say we're not going to do anything there, we're not talking about 11,700 cars on Pebble Creek Parkway. We're talking about 25,000 cars. That's quite a difference, guys. So we are going to have to extend Lakeway. I mean, it has to happen. Property values was another little misstatement I just wanted to clear up. There are lots of studies showing that increased traffic and increased noise decrease property values, doesn't increase it. Commonly cited figure is that a 10 decibel increase in noise translates to about a 6% decrease in sales price. Okay? So there will be an impact on our community. Things have changed, the community exists, and it didn't 30 years ago. As far as emergency services go, we do need to get there fast. And actually, Station 5 does a great job. It's not perfect. I mean, the National Fire Safety Standard is in urban, suburban areas is a 5-minute total response time.
And I apologize, I am going to have to cut you off. As we said, that we are going to try to do our best to stick to a strict 3-minute time frame this evening. We have a lot of people that are looking to speak. Thank you very much. Next up is Mr. Brian Worth. And again, if you can state your name and address.
Brian Worth, 5309 Quaker Ridge Court in Pebble Creek. Thank you, first of all, for giving me the opportunity to speak to you, to raise some concerns, and more importantly, to respond to some of the study facts that were presented today. First of all, to back onto the golf course thing, one more fact. There's approximately 16,000 golf courses in the United States. Of those 16,000, there's only less than 1% that have a street going through them. And there's a reason that a street going through a golf course ends it pretty much. Those that are still working and being operated have made adjustments to them, but they're very small streets that go through them with minimal traffic. You put too much through there, the people aren't going to come play golf there anymore. It's just going to be undoable, so to speak. Going back to the study, as it was presented, there were a couple of things. On the maps, they do a very nice job of putting the red for the overcongested and the orange as they're going up. And it makes you, the presentation makes it appear that that's the way it is for 24 hours a day. We're really looking at a period of time, day to night, dark to sunrise. The traffic is way down. During the daylight, it's way up. The choke point on Lakeway, which I would like to point out, is where Pebble Creek Elementary School is. The traffic flow there is bad now, is only going to get worse later. There are solutions that can be done to that. Some of them cost money. There may be some that may not. But those have not been addressed in any way or form that I've seen in the 5 years that I've lived in Pebble Creek. I think that there's also a lot of people that are against this. I've not heard of very many that are for that. The other thing, in the council meeting when this was originally proposed to go through this study, there was supposed to be that emergency road. Well, it wasn't until a couple of weeks ago that a lot of people found out that that wasn't even an option anymore. And so that supposedly being a compromise was taken off the table, and that wasn't really advertised to the residents that I saw. Could have been, and I missed it. If I did, I apologize for that. But it seems, again, that the city is trying to do things, changing the game plan as we go along. Also in the study, the only thing that the residents had talked about was taking away the Pebble Creek Parkway extension. There wasn't any mention of the corporate extension the other side as well. That impact may not be great, but it is an impact when that's taken away. No individual study of just taking that one piece out of the formula was studied in the study as I saw that. I think there's a couple of things. The people in Pebble Creek, as you know, are against the extension. There was support for the compromise on the emergency road access.
Thank you very much. Next on our list, Mr. Charles Herman. Yep.
Good evening, my name is Charles Herman, and I live with my wife Lorraine at 1019 Muirfield Village in Pebble Creek. Before I continue with my remarks, I would like to express my appreciation to you and to the council members as well, and all the other public servants of our city for your service. Following the strong declaration of President Bush, those of us at the Bush School have regularly acknowledged that public service is a noble calling, but it's sometimes very difficult. So thank you. You're on the Planning Committee and the City Council are currently considering a road extension to link the Pebble Creek community to the new planned subdivision to the south. A recent compromise proposal is to create an extension to the Pebble Creek Parkway, but to restrict that link to the south to a two-lane route exclusively for emergency vehicles. It seems to me that restricting that road extension to emergency vehicles poses a long-term set of problems. These difficulties involve both the enforcement of the restricted use and long-term political pressures from residents in the new southern areas to relax the restrictions. My understanding is that the predominant new areas B, C, and D are projected to consist of approximately 3,000 homes. They will need access to more than the residential areas of Pebble Creek. A better option, it seems to me, is to establish Lakeway as the link to the new southern communities rather than restricted access through the Pebble Creek Parkway. If Lakeway's southern extension is curved towards the east, it could merge directly into Area C of the new subdivision. Of course, there's a public school which has one side parallel to Lakeway, but the school's entrance is on another street, as you know. There would appear to be multiple advantages to the use of Lakeway. First, it would negate the requirement that the route's use be restricted to emergency vehicles. Second, it would be a faster way for emergency vehicles to get to the Area C than even Highway 6, according to the city's own study of different routes for emergency vehicles. I can provide that information if you wish. Furthermore, the extension of Lakeway would provide further property space for business sites already established along the street.
Mr. Herman?
I strongly believe the extension of Lakeway offers multiple advantages.
Thank you very much. Up next, Ms. Courtney Cannon. Is Courtney here? All right, we will move that to later and keep moving in case she does show up. Is it Peter Bastian?
Commissioners, thank you. Thank you very much. Distinguished members of the City of College Station Planning and Zoning Commission, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I know your time is valuable, and I very much appreciate your service in helping make College Station a great place to live and work. My name is Peter Bastian. My wife Cheryl and I live at 5153 Stonewater Loop in the Pebble Creek neighborhood. I'm here to ask you to vote yes on the proposed amendment to remove the Pebble Creek Parkway extension from the comprehensive plan. While that plan provides long-term guidance, it is also a living document, as per the city's website, one that should evolve as our community grows. Today, I'm asking you to consider a different vision for this little strip of land, one that creates a connected multi-neighborhood network of walking and biking trails and parks in South College Station. As a relatively new resident of Pebble Creek, I've seen firsthand how this parkway is used today, and you have to see it to appreciate it. Yes, it carries cars, but it also is where people walk their dogs, ride bikes, go to school, access the Lick Creek trailhead, and even travel by a golf cart to get to their tee times. In many ways, it functions just as much as a recreational corridor as it does a roadway. Keeping the extension in the plan prioritizes vehicle connectivity. I get all that, but there's a cost to that. It would fundamentally change the character of this space, reducing its appeal and safety for the everyday recreational uses that define it today. It risks turning what is now a shared community asset into just another road. But connectivity doesn't have to mean cars alone. It can and should include safe, accessible connections for pedestrians and cyclists and other low-impact modes of travel. With the growth happening in South College Station, including developments like Savannah Oaks and Southern Point, we have a unique opportunity here. Instead of extending this roadway, we can create a dedicated pedestrian and recreational connector, one that links three neighborhoods, parks, trails, and allows residents to move safely without relying on vehicles.
This approach enhances quality of life, not just for Pebble Creek, but for multiple large communities. We're talking about tens of thousands of residents. And importantly, there's already a better option for vehicles, Lakeway Drive. It's wider, designed for high traffic, and already serves as a commercial corridor. It's simply more appropriate fit for the connecting these areas by car. So the choice is clear. Use Lakeway Drive for vehicles and preserve the corridor, this corridor, as a unique recreational asset. I respectfully ask to vote yes on this amendment. Let's take this opportunity to think creatively and build something that adds lasting value for the residents of Pebble Creek and the future Savannah Oaks and Southern Point. Not just another road, but a shared.
Thank you. Up next, Janine Smith.
And I have a presentation, yeah. Thank you. Good evening. I'm Janine Smith, and Chuck Beege and myself live at 4927 Firestone Drive in Pebble Creek, which is right at the intersection of Pebble Creek Parkway and Firestone, okay? Let's see if I can go to my next slide. You guys had a lot better maps than me. One of my questions was, what is going to be developed in this area? And the fire chief's maps were actually pretty good. So we heard mixed use, multifamily homes and other things like that. So I'll move on, but the headline stays, I'm supporting the removal of the extension, okay? And every resident I've talked to and spoken with about this wants it removed, okay? I heard that there are some people that may support the extension. Everybody I know, including my almost 90-year-old mother who lives on Stonebriar Circle, which backs up to Pebble Creek Parkway, does not want the extension, okay? Now, some additional questions, and I know you guys can't answer these tonight, but somebody needs to, and I would like to know the answers to these, is who's the developer? Let's just skip to number 2, right? So who's going to be doing all this development down there? Have they done all the studies that might be required? Okay, I think one of the item 3 that was shown earlier was an environmental study or impact. That's one of my big concerns. Chuck and I walked down to Alum Creek last evening, and it's a beautiful area. It's actually very steep slopes, has a lot of water, has a flood study, has an environmental study, has a water quality study, have wetland permit studies, stormwater management studies. Have those all been done for that area? It's very low lying. I think you guys all know that if it is extended and a bridge is built, that bridge would be very, very expensive because of the terrain. Okay? So lots of questions. I know the EPA works with the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. I have a friend who works there in Waco, and they are the ones who are supposed to ensure compliance for our natural watershed areas, right? And that is part of the Navasota River watershed area, Alum Creek. By the way, that's a picture of a Houston toad, which is an endangered species that has been found in the Brazos River Valley area. Yeah. Has anybody done a study on that? Anyway, this is a picture I took last evening. It's a beautiful natural area, and I want to encourage you, please, to remove the extension.
Thank you. Next is Carrie Roper.
My name is Kerry Roper. I'm at 5205 Hawks Ridge. You know, one of staff's primary arguments is against the amendment is the emergency response time. And we reviewed the study and don't have time to address that, obviously, in 3 minutes, but we do have a few comments. Their study assumes, one, an average response time of about 32 miles per hour not speed, 32 miles per hour regardless of the route. 32 mile per hour is probably kind of aggressive for Pebble Creek Parkway, but for Lakeway and Rock Prairie, which are also in the comp plan, the emergency vehicles could go considerably faster on those. In fact, on the comp plan, Rock Prairie is a 4-lane road. Lakeway is 2.5 times wider curb to curb than Pebble Creek Parkway and could easily accommodate higher speeds for emergency vehicles and could even be 4 lanes without any infrastructure change. In addition, there is no room to pull over for emergency vehicles on much of Pebble Creek Parkway. It is simply too skinny in several areas. Given that, of the 3 sites in the study agrees that Lakeway is the fastest route to Area C. And I would argue that although the distance is greater, since the speeds would be faster on other roadways like Lakeway, that the other 2 areas in the study could be reached by other routes much faster than they're shown, and it may in fact be as fast or faster than Pebble Creek Parkway. Now, a separate issue has been talked a little bit about is assuming the expected annexation of Southern Point and the expected development of the other areas south of Pebble Creek. There could be 5,000 new homes down there in the next 12 to 15 years. That's probably about 15,000 people. I think the study showed about 14,000. We currently have 6 fire stations and are building a 7th for 130,000 citizens in College Station. That's 1 per 18,000 citizens. It is unlikely that Station 5 can handle an additional 15,000, and a new station will be needed regardless of the decision on Pebble Creek Parkway. Now, I know staff has talked a little bit about the cost for this, but there will be additional impact fees and property taxes that will be significant that will help on that. Also, Chief Mann has stated that Station 7 will be used to help with growth in this area, and their route would not be affected at all with this decision. Now, all of this is simply to show that there are alternatives for emergency response, but there are no safety alternatives for the 100,000 people, pedestrians, joggers, cyclists, and cart riders annually along Pebble Creek Parkway, and the additional 75,000 crossings by the golfers, as we talked about earlier. From the traffic study, we can calculate that there would be an almost continuous flow of vehicles, 1 every 5 to 6 seconds during the daytime, and even more during peak periods. If Pebble Creek is extended, how are golfers from all across the city supposed to safely cross there? That would be an unbelievably dangerous situation. And the interesting part of the traffic study, and I think that Anthony got it incorrect, is if you look at it, the percentage increase on Pebble Creek Parkway would be significant, but the study
Thank you very much. Did Ms. Courtney Cannon ever arrive to step up to speak? I, again, recognize that that there's a lot of passion for this, and so I am going to ask if there's anyone else that would like to come up to speak, with the caveat being that the commission has heard the opinion so far this evening, and if you would like to come up to speak, it would be for something that would be different, but the floor is open. Okay, seeing no one else wanting to step forward to speak, I will close the public hearing and open it up for discussion.
There's no real good solution to this issue, although the residents of Pebble Creek certainly have made it clear that doesn't sound, the extension does not sound like a good option for that community.
Keep going that way, Mr. Higgin.
If you can indulge me in just a little anecdotal information from my personal experiences. About 10 years ago, I got our community at Emerald Forest received a call from the Dan Rudge, who was new in the Metropolitan Plan, basically the regional planning director. And he told us that what was on the plan was to take 2818 and extend it and continue it on into Emerald Parkway. That basically converting Emerald Parkway into an extension of, and that's when they were building the Texas Avenue to Highway 6 extension. They were completing that, and they wanted to just put it on the plan to continue that in. Well, when the word got out about that, thanks to him, we had a lot of meetings about it, and we had a petition from over 700 residents and interested people opposing that and taking it off of the master plan. And the thing that carried the day on that particular one wasn't that it was an imminent problem, or that it was going to be an issue it was the fact that having it on that plan had an incredible impact on the long-term real estate values in Emerald Forest. It was a hidden issue, and what we did by taking it off that plan is that the city and the county and the regional people found a different solution. And what they did was, and what you see is the overpass that goes 2818 onto Welborn Road. That was almost a direct response to putting that traffic that would have been going down the Emerald Parkway and putting it over on Fitch. So the question that I would have is that if our only option tonight is to take that plan off that, in order to look for a different solution, then I would vote in favor of taking that off, because that will basically force the issue of looking for that alternative that may not seem as feasible today as it will be 5, 6, 7 years from now. So,
Warren.
This has been on the plan, you said, since 1993? One. So it may have worked for the plan then. I'm not sure it works for the plan now. I live at the corner of Welch and Rock Prairie, and Rock Prairie used to dead end right there. And I can tell you, since it was probably necessary to extend Rock Prairie all the way to Welch, but since that road was extended, the noise on that road is increased 10 times plus the traffic. But I would be inclined to vote to not extend the road.
Is that we voting or we just talking?
Right now, just a discussion.
Okay, yeah, so let's see what I put. I just feel like it'll be unfair to the people of the future for us to be responsible for paying us to, pay to increase Lakeway, when we're not saying that Pebble Creek is going to be developed anytime soon. We're just saying that the developers are responsible for paying for it, right? When it does come that time.
And then can you answer that for us, please?
Correct. So the thoroughfare plan is what says, it sets the overall expectation for the city when we create it. Ultimately, when a development comes in, when they come in, they have to abide by that thoroughfare plan. So when Savannah Oaks comes in for development, they haven't submitted any of their development applications. They just submitted their first application this week with us to rezone the property. And so they are 5 to 10 years at least before they even got anywhere near this area of their development to build this road, but that road is still required. And so the second it's gone, it's no longer required. Why would they spend that money to build that road? And then if we need it in the future, it becomes a city responsibility. So for now, it is a development responsibility on the thoroughfare plan.
Thank you.
My sympathies are with you. I cross Pebble Creek Parkway on the golf cart path 6 times a week. I use the Lick Creek Greenway Trail to ride from the Midtown area across to the Lick Creek Path. And like I said, at least one of those times a week, I've got my 12-year-old with me. And so we cross that, and I understand the traffic impact is already a thing that we have to take into consideration, and this being developed would increase that exponentially. I'm aware of that. Given that, I don't think that this is the body to make that change. I think that's more appropriately made at council. We have a limited amount of criteria that we can consider, the biggest one being, have there been substantial changes? The first thing that was pointed out, and given that this has been on the plan since it was developed, since everyone has moved there, and there haven't been substantial changes to the thoroughfare plan, the traffic patterns, I can't think of a justifiable reason to approve this at the moment. That's not to say, though, that it shouldn't change. I just don't think that this is the body to change it.
Anthony, can you step back up, please? And I think my question and/or comment may be along the same lines with Trey. So if this is removed, that is not saying that the city doesn't see that there is a need for it. If it is removed, that is at some point, if this is then going back and being put back in, it'll then be the city's responsibility, correct?
It would have to be an action of council. If it's removed, it's basically gone, and it would not be there. It would have to be an act of council to put it back. So the same process we had to go through to get to this point, we would have to do the same process again in reverse, or not in reverse, but to do the exact same process to add it back to the thoroughfare plan. And then at that point, it has to be back on the plan, and then we would have to go out as a city to fund the project and build it.
Okay, but I guess from my understanding, my question right now is if it is voted to be removed, it's not because of a lack of, like, the need is there. It would just be.
Correct.
And so the need would continue. If it was brought back up even through council, it would then be the city's responsibility going forward, correct?
Correct. The need would be there, but we would have to find an alternative to alleviate whatever issues that it causes. And so we'd have to go, there would be, as we talked about in the analysis, there'd have to be various things done to alleviate the issues that it would cause.
Okay.
A question. So the decision we make tonight will then go to the city council, right?
Correct. This is just a recommendation body.
I do have a question for the city attorney, as I want to make sure that when we move forward with this, I don't want us to make a negative motion. So, and that's where I just want to make sure I'm a little confused on this. So if we make a motion to approve, we are making a motion to remove.
That is correct.
The thoroughfare,
Yes.
remove the plan.
Yes.
And just want to make sure that we all understand what that means as we are making our motion.
So there was a lot of conversation, Anthony, about making this a emergency vehicle only, but I don't see any option that we have to recommend that. I like that as an option. That way we still do maintain some of that. I understand there's some concerns it could be a bait and switch where at some point it becomes public access, but at bare minimum it would allow us to allow someone else to shoulder the burden of building that. It would allow emergency access. It seems like it would kill a lot of birds with one stone. Is there any pathway to make that possible?
There is not a clean pathway to make it not our burden to build. So as I mentioned, in order to do the emergency vehicle only, that's not a designation of a thoroughfare or a street. That's a different requirement out of the fire code. We could work with the developer in a development agreement, but they would have to come to the table to also want to do that, to see if they would be willing to pony up and pay for that. Otherwise, the city would be paying, and the most likely scenario, the city would be paying for it. Council did an exercise a couple months ago where they went through and ranked their capital projects. One of the capital projects on that list of ranking was an emergency access only for Pebble Creek, if the city was to build it as an emergency access only. And so the idea would be the city's responsibility to build it if we did emergency vehicle only. Now, you can make that. You could make a recommendation to remove it, and you would recommend to council that they go forth and do the emergency vehicle only access.
So in that scenario, if we remove that, then the developers have no burden to shoulder that cost. That will still be at the city's cost.
If this line goes off the map, the developer does zero towards this area.
Okay,
Zero.
so there's no way to put a restriction in that would require a developer to put an emergency-only access road there?
Correct.
So that is, just to be clear, that's an option I would like, but it's not one that we have.
There is nothing to require them. It would be the city's responsibility to make that happen.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, any other thoughts or discussion? If not, then.
Chairman, sorry, just
No.
to clarify, you can still make the positive motion. It would just need 4 votes to pass.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we all understood that a positive motion in this, motioning to approve, is to remove the roadway. I just wanted to make sure that we understood that as we move forward. And so with that, if there's no other discussion, I will open it up to the will of our commission.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the elimination of the park, or the Pebble Creek Parkway from the thoroughfare plan.
I will second that.
We have a motion and a second to approve, the removal of the Rock Prairie extension. Is there any other discussion, or would anyone like to speak on that motion? You don't have to. I didn't know if you wanted to add anything to it.
The only thing
I think in my original comment.
Your comments for that were good?
I think in my original comment, I forgot to mention the incredible work that the staff has done. This is in no way demeaning the amount of work. If nothing else, I have a great deal of faith in the fact that they're going to find a solution for us. That may not be the easiest one, may not be the cheapest one, but it's maybe the best one for the city. So, again, thank you.
Yeah, I would say the same thing, that there has been a lot of thought, a lot of community input on this. We've got to find another solution, and I'm sure staff can come up with another solution.
Yeah, well, I like to say something before staff should come up with another solution. Be careful about taking it off, I think.
Well, the only reason to take it off is that would, create the impetus for the staff to make another solution.
I just wouldn't want them to take it off without having another solution. So I think they can do both, or we should be able to, I guess, instruct or suggest council for them to do both. I think if we could possibly do that.
Well, the motion is on the floor. I will just add that there were, I believe Anthony put forth some solutions that would have to happen, which does include the city taking the brunt of the cost of any additional cost.
Just real quick, so Leslie doesn't smite me, can you add to your motion that to also amend the bicycle pedestrian greenways plan as well? I forgot that it's the bike plan, the ped plan, and the thoroughfare plan.
Yes, and because of all of those have been approved before us, that we would be amending those as well. So can you just add that to your motion and then have a second?
Yes, I'd like to add that to my motion.
Does that suffice?
I will second that.
Okay. Any other discussion? That being said,
Chairman, did you
yes.
get a second?
Oh, yeah,
statement?
and
I will second.
and a
Okay,
second
thank you.
on that. Are we good? Okay, so all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against? And we have, with only 6 of us here, we have a 3-3 decision. And how does that recommendation go toward
It would be a
council?
negative motion. I'm sorry, a negative recommendation because the motion failed.
The motion failed. And so with that, again, this does go forward to council, and there will be an opportunity to continue to have this discussion with council. Anthony, there he is. I'm going to imagine you're going to want me there for that. Yes, so I will be there for that too. And again, the commission understands that this is a passionate and serious conversation to be had. And I will follow the lines of Commissioner Collins in that we do have a much more limited scope in what we can do and change based on the criteria that is put before us. As you can see, this was still a split vote as well, as we take these situations very, very seriously. I will hold off on that, but I will say that there are council members here that are listening as well. And again, this will be up for discussion next week at the council meeting to go from that. Thank you to everyone that stepped forward to speak. We appreciate it. Anthony and your staff, thank y'all very much. And we will continue on. Moving on to agenda item 5.4, which is moved up to 5.3. Public hearing, presentation, discussion, and possible action regarding an ordinance amending Appendix A of the Unified Development Ordinance, Article 4, Zoning Districts, Section 4.2, Official Zoning Map of the Code of Ordinances for the City of College Station, Texas, by changing the zoning district boundary from R rural to RS restricted suburban for approximately 222 acres generally located on Greens Prairie Road, east of the intersection of Greens Prairie Road and W.S. Phillips Parkway. And that is Ms. Macias, there you are.
Good evening, Commissioners. Robin Macias, Planning and Development Services. Tonight's request is to rezone approximately 222 acres located along Greens Prairie Road. As you may recall, you heard a rezoning for this property in October of last year. That request was to rezone the property from R Rural to GS General Suburban. Council heard this item in November of last year, and both the commissioners and City Council recommended denial of that request and directed the applicant to pursue a zoning district with a less dense maximum. Previously, the request was to provide approximately 880 homes. This request you will see tonight is for the same amount of homes. As in the previous request, General Suburban would allow for a maximum density of 8 units per acre. They were proposing to rezone the property but only have a maximum density of around 4 units per acre. The request tonight is to rezone the property from R Rural to RS Restricted Suburban, which has a maximum density of 4 units per acre. The comprehensive plan future land use designates this area as suburban residential. Suburban residential land use designation is primarily for single-family residential areas that consist of low to moderate density single-family lots. It's generally consistent with a single-family subdivision. The appropriate zoning districts for this land use are GS General Suburban and RS Restricted Suburban. I have received 6 general inquiries over the phone, 2 phone calls in general opposition, and you have received multiple emails in opposition as well. Staff is recommending approval of this request as it is in line with the comprehensive plan. This will be heard at the April 23rd City Council meeting. I am available for questions, as is the applicant and a representative.
I am going to open this up for questions from the rest of the commission, but I will start with one here at the beginning. What's changed?
They have reduced the maximum density from 8 units per acre with General Suburban to 4 units per acre. There was a lot of discussion at the last P&Z meeting and City Council meeting about the potential of the maximum density being 8 units per acre. And at the direction of council, they came back with a zoning district that would only allow for a maximum of 4 dwelling units per acre.
Okay, and sorry, that was what I was confused as you were going through the discussion and making sure, because that was the conversation that we all had on this, as well as the concern for the increase in, or possible increase in what that was. So thank you for clarifying what has actually changed in that. And now I will move down to see if there's any other discussion or questions we'll start at the very end.
This is a quick question, is when you're calculating the number of units per acre, is that a plat average? In other words, you could have 10 on 1 acre and 2 on another, as long as the average was hitting 4?
No, sir, it is for the entire subdivision.
But in the entire subdivision, if you're under this zoning change, you would have the ability to put more than 4 on 1 acre, as long as the community average was 4.
So when looking at the preliminary plan, we would take the entire subdivision area, so the entire 222 acres, and that is where you would have to have 4 units per acre.
Okay, all right.
So I think an easier way to get at what Mr. Higdon is asking is, what is the minimum lot size they could build on? So I was at 0.16, if I'm understanding correctly. So the smallest individual lot could be 0.16, is that correct?
So for the restricted suburban zoning district, the average lot size should be 10,000 square feet with an absolute minimum average lot area of 6,500. So the smallest lot size that you could have in restricted suburban is 6,500 square feet.
Which comes out to 0.16 acres? Okay, thank you.
That answer, okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have one.
Go ahead, one.
So, I'm sorry, remind me what was the number of homes in the original plan?
Approximately 880.
And what's the number of homes in this plan?
Approximately 880.
Okay. You're gonna have to explain that to me in Alabama math.
So our original objection, Robin, because I was one of the objectors, and I've raised this exact question. The original zoning they were requesting would have allowed up to 1,776 houses.
And that's why I was
for the
making
property.
sure I understood what
So
the
while
change
they were
was.
saying they were only going to do 880, they had the ability with the change to put up to 1,776
That's what it was.
homes. We actually made the recommendation that they could achieve what they said they wanted with this lesser zoning. It would be more appropriate to what was with it. They've actually made that change. They had some public hearings. They opened it up to community input, and then came back and made the change that both planning and zoning and council required. Now they can't go over that. So before they could have doubled that. Is that correct, Robin?
That is correct.
Thanks.
And I'm glad that those questions came up, because that was a very heavy discussion for us. So thank you, Robin, for making sure that we are all on the same page with that. Any other?
Yeah, Robin, one more. That is consistent with what's across Greens Prairie.
With Greens Prairie Reserve?
I guess that would be looking north.
Castlegate?
Yeah, into that area.
So Castlegate 1 has a rough max density of about 3.4 units per acre. Castlegate 2 is 4 units per acre. They are both general suburban zoning.
But if my it is, to his question, I think it is more in line with most of the surrounding areas generally, correct?
Yes,
And
sir.
that's where the difference was before, was it could get way out of, we were seeing that it could get, with that possible doubling of the amount of homes in there, it could possibly not have matched the surrounding neighborhoods, generally.
Generally, yes,
Okay.
but generally, the maximum density for general suburban is hard to achieve. As you can see in Castlegate 2, that's zoned general suburban, they only have approximately 4 units per acre.
But yeah, the concern was that the possibility was there based on certain issues. But I think, are we answering everybody's questions?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Robin. You said we have a representative?
They're here to answer any questions.
Oh, okay, but no presentation?
No, sir.
Do we have any questions for the representative? Thank you very much. Okay, this is scheduled for a public hearing. I will now open the public hearing. We do have some people that have signed up to speak, and again, as we have done all night, if you could state your name and address for the record, and please keep your remarks to 3 minutes or less. First up is Craig McDaniel.
Good evening. My name is Craig McDaniel. I live with my wife, Michelle, at 16335 Riva Ridge Road in College Station. There are some issues with the Wyndham Tract development that we've talked about, but I acknowledge that that land is going to be developed. I'm not trying to stop the development. The issue that I specifically want to talk about tonight is the connector road into the Wood Lake subdivision. For those of you that aren't familiar with Wood Lake Drive, it's a narrow 2-lane asphalt road. It has no shoulders, no bike lane, no curb. It has no sidewalks, no street lights, or even a painted center stripe on the road. On each side of the road are drainage ditches, so there's no underground storm drainage, and there's no good place to expand the road or add sidewalks. In the Wood Lake neighborhood, people go for their daily walks to exercise, or with their dogs, or with their kids in strollers and bikes, and they do it on the road because there's no place else to do that, all right? At night, the road is very dark because we don't have street lights. People know to slow down because the deer come out onto the road, onto the sides of the road. To better understand what that connector road would mean, I sent an email to Robin and she gave me some details. Thank you for that. In her reply, she stated that the TIA predicted up to 62 cars per hour of additional traffic, and noted that the road was designed to handle up to 5,000 vehicles per day on the two-lane asphalt road. She also mentioned that Woodlake Drive is a county concern and that any changes to it would need to be funded and executed by the county. Here's what that means to the neighborhood. If one of my neighbors decides to take her kids for a walk in the stroller or on their bikes, and she goes just 1 mile down the road and back, during that walk, they may have to dodge between 40 and 60 new cars. That's based on the TIA prediction. That's a hazard, okay, for both the people that are on the road and for the people trying to drive around them. So what I'm asking today is I would encourage you to rethink that connector into the Woodlake neighborhood. It would change the character of the neighborhood from being a cul-de-sac neighborhood to a thoroughfare, but you're also creating a safety hazard that would not be easy to solve. If you can't or won't permanently foreclose the connector, I would ask you to put that part of the plan on hold until you can coordinate changes with the county to make that road safe for the Woodlake residents. Okay, and in closing, well, I'm about out of time, but thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much. Up next, Robert Todd.
Robert Todd, 16736 Woodlake Drive, College Station, Texas. As my predecessor pretty much has addressed most of the issues I would like to, and that is regarding the connector road. I'd also point out that to me, the way it's drawn in is also excludes a lot of issues on where that road runs. You've heard well what it would do as it connects to Woodlake, but it also is going through land that is still private, not part of this development, and would be in the county. So the very premise of that road is problematic from the get-go to me. If it is necessary to be on there for the zoning to be appropriate, then I don't think it's adequately developed as to how that road would really come about, other than just someone drew it on a map. You're talking land issues, county issues, the ability of the existing roadways to bear that additional traffic. So my request is that if that road is essential to this being appropriately zoned as restricted suburban, which from the last go-around in October was pretty much what most of us felt would be appropriate, because it couldn't just willy-nilly expand if it changed developer or owner. But if that road is critical for that being the appropriate zoning there, for that to be a viable neighborhood, I think there's a tremendous problem that needs to be addressed by staff and the commission. Thank you.
Up next, Ms. Dolores Graham.
Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. My name is Dolores Kamichik Graham, and I live at 4805 Pearl River Court in Greens Prairie Reserve. And I've spoken on this issue before at the last meeting, and I remain opposed to this rezoning request. Actually, it's the same request. It's the same number of homes, and we still have the same issues that were brought up at the last meeting. Traffic. A study was done in August of 2025, and Robin sent me the details of that study. And there's a serious omission. The intersection of Arrington, Greens Prairie Road, and Fitch were not considered in that study. And I can attest, traffic backs up. I was going down Fitch, I was going to turn left on Arrington, no way. The traffic was backed up to the Highway 6 frontage road. This was when school was letting out, and this happens multiple times a day. But yet, nothing has been done. A study needs to be completed that considers that major bottleneck that we have today. Another traffic issue is Oldham Oaks Avenue. The plan is, if this is approved, it will be cut all the way through Greens Prairie into the new proposed development. My house backs up to that road beginning at 6 in the morning. Trucks are barreling down that road. I have watched school children trying to cross that road to get to the school bus stop. The trucks don't slow down. And case in point, a few weeks ago, one of those trucks was going around the roundabout at Diamondback, which feeds into Oldham Oaks, and they took a sign out. They kept going until the sign got wedged under the truck and it couldn't go any further. So it's a dangerous situation with Oldham Oaks today, and there will be even more trucks barreling through if this is approved. In the prior meetings, multiple developments down Greens Prairie mentioned drainage as a major issue, but no drainage study was done. And if you review this builder on the internet, they have multiple class action and individual lawsuits and Better Business Bureau complaints against them alleging code violations and poor construction. And if this happens with this development, it will affect adversely our property values in Greens Prairie Reserve. And I know the council and you are all concerned about affordability, but if a person buys a low-cost home and they have legal expenses and repairs that a builder will not address, is that really affordable? So in summary, I'm urging you to do the appropriate studies and vote against this.
Thank you very much. Next is Gene Phelps.
Good evening. My name's Jean Phelps, and I live at 4023 Chaco Canyon Drive, which is not in the city limits of College Station, but we are impacted by all of the decisions that you make here. I live in Indian Lakes, drive down Arrington Road almost every day. I used to live in Nantucket. We had the same issues come up when Greens Prairie Reserve was going in. Fortunately, Hunter Goodwin was one of the developers and was willing to address our concerns. I don't have that same comfort level with the developer that we're talking about here. One of the issues that came up then that is still an issue now is the fact that Arrington Road on one side is county property and on the other side is city property. So when Greens Prairie Reserve was going in, the issue of the extra traffic, which is just going to be compounded that much more when you're talking 880 houses, nobody wants to fix that road. The city of College Station says it's not our road, it's not our responsibility. We're not going to spend the money because then, or the county says they're not going to spend the money because then the city's going to annex it, and then they will have wasted the money. The city says we're not going to spend the money because it's a county road. So until you start addressing these issues that impact not just Greens Prairie and Nantucket and Woodlake and all of these other communities, you're going to have this problem. And I disagree with the fact that somebody said that, you know, this fits in with the surrounding communities. It doesn't. Greens Prairie Reserve is not a high-density community. Nantucket is not a high-density community. Indian Lakes is not a high-density community. Woodlake is not a high-density community. The new Arrowhead Village is not a high-density community. It does not fit in. The traffic's going to increase. I'm a walker. I can't tell you how many times I've almost been hit with the traffic in Indian Lakes as it is now. When you have 880 houses that are backed up because they don't want to go down Fitch, they don't want to hit the bottlenecks that were just discussed, they're going to start going down through Indian Lakes. We don't have sidewalks. We don't have the capacity to deal with that traffic. There's going to be a tragedy, either on Arrington, or on Indian Lakes, or on Wood Lake. And these things need to be addressed before we move forward with any of this. 880 houses does not fit in that area. I want people to have good houses, but it needs to be done appropriately, and that's not the way to do it.
Shane Phelps.
Good evening. My name is Shane Phelps. I live at 4023 Chaco Canyon Drive with the woman you just heard from. And she said almost everything that I wanted to say. I would like to emphasize that Gene is exactly right that this will not fit in. I'm a little confused as to why this was denied before when we were talking about 888 homes, and we're back here talking about 888 homes. Gene is exactly right that there's Green Prairie Reserve, there's Nantucket, there's Indian Lakes, there's Wood Lake. These are not high-density home subdivisions. 888 homes put there is going to drive traffic absolutely crazy in that area. My major concern is that Mesa Verde goes to Highway 6. People are not going to go down to the Fitch and Arrington Road because it is a nightmare already. They're going to go through Mesa Verde. And it's a 40-mile-an-hour speed zone. We already have people going down there at 60 miles an hour, cutting from other areas to get to Highway 6, and that is only going to increase. There are no sidewalks in Indian Lakes for a reason, because we moved into Indian Lakes because we like that rural area, we like our trails, we like the fact that we've got people who just get up and walk the neighborhood, and that is going to materially change. 888 homes, that's another 1,800 cars that we're going to be talking about probably. It's going to exponentially increase the traffic. Arrington Road can't handle it. Mesa Verde can't handle it. It is going to create safety hazards throughout all of that area. It is an unworkable plan. It was an unworkable plan before when we said it was, when we denied it before, and it's not any more workable now. And we encourage you to vote against this rezoning.
Thank you. Rachel Burnett. I see she is not here. As with previous agenda items, this is scheduled for a public hearing. If there is someone that would like to step forward to speak, please do so. Just as before, understand that the commission has heard your concerns, and so if no one is going to speak on anything separate, we will move forward. Good.
Thank you, Chair. I am Joe Crawford. I am the representative of the applicant here, and I didn't want to come all this way and not say anything. So,
yes, sir.
Just hearing some concerns. First of all, that number 888 is getting focused on, but like was discussed at length at the last meeting, that is likely not going to be the ending number of homes that are put on here. That's the absolute maximum, and your staff knows and any real estate developer knows that that's not a realistic number. I kind of want to zoom out a little bit and look at the comp plan and remember what the city went through to put that together. That was a long process. It involved staff time and city money. And part of that process was getting input from everywhere in the city, seeing what the city's needs are, seeing what goes where. So if you look at this piece of land specifically, it's easy to say I want everything that you could have in a city in this one tract of land, but through the comp plan, the decision was made that this was going to be suburban residential property, because that's what made sense for the comprehensive plan of the city. And what you don't want to do in the planning process is go tract by tract and reinvent the wheel and renegotiate and do what basically ends up being spot zoning for every application that comes to you. So I would just encourage you guys to rely on the work that was done by your staff and the rest of the city in putting together your comp plan, and just use the only other land use category that remains under the comp plan. It's either this or GS, and you guys said no to GS, so this is the only way to follow your comp plan on this tract. The traffic and the drainage, that'll be addressed at the platting phase, and the developer obviously wants to, make a development that people want to live in. So that's all I got.
Any questions for the applicant's representative?
What assurance, you mentioned that that 880 was a maximum.
Yeah.
What assurances could you give the homeowners that it's going to be less than that?
I'm not in the business of giving assurances at this meeting. Those assurances were offered at the last meeting and they were rejected by the public. They wanted the zoning designation that you guys were considering to reflect the absolute maximum. So I would recommend that you consider 888, but I would just say that it's likely going to be less than that.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. And at this time, we will close the public hearing. I do want to, oh, sorry, I do apologize. We can open that back up. My apologies. I didn't see that. Please step forward. And state your name and address, please.
Yeah, my name is Neil Hoganson. I live in Sweetwater Subdivision, 1435 Still Forest. So I was at the previous meetings, both this meeting and the city council meeting. And I agree with what was said with everything, but a few things I want to say. Number one is at the previous meeting, the plan was presented as 880. And at that point, they were going for the zoning that could go up to 1,800. They never actually committed to the 880. They said they would probably stick with that, but they had the ability to go higher. Here, they're saying that they might go lower than 880, but they can also go right up to it. So they're not promising anything again. The two main things that were the problem last time, and I agree with, this is the compromise zoning that was suggested at the previous meetings. But the two main problems with the development are still the traffic study that only went 1 mile and didn't do any of the major intersections, and also the drainage. And I know that's not to be addressed at this, but I want to go on the record that these are major problems. The drainage, the county knew nothing about it, that all the drainage from this development will go to a small creek that runs through our development, and during rains, the water comes right up to the foundations of 2 of the homes in our development. And then it goes on to Wood Lake. So this is a tiny, tiny little creek. If you took a look at it, one Suburban would fill the creek. And that is going to need to be addressed. And I want to go on record that before any final plan is approved for this development, those problems have to be fixed. And I want to go officially on that because I know you're probably going to agree to this because that's what was suggested as a compromise on the last zoning. But those two problems still exist. And the county needs to be involved because the county line is right at the end of the development, and it comes right onto our subdivision, and it's a tiny, tiny little creek with houses right next to it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir. Please state your name and address.
Yeah, I'm Adam Klaus. I live at 16820 Woodlake Drive in Woodlake Subdivision. I realize that this really isn't talking about the things that matter to us because you're considering another rezoning request, but having lived in Woodlake since the late 90s and knowing that the subdivision was first, at least our house was first built in the early 70s, and then having been through and responded to some of tried to contribute to the master plan, which was the thoroughfare plan or whatever that was. And I don't remember if that was in the early 2000s, I can't remember. It was a long time ago. We never were listened to then. We don't want roads coming through our neighborhood. That's the nature of our neighborhood. I think Sweetwater's probably the same, same, you know. And I don't understand, they didn't listen to, the community who created that plan didn't listen to us then and kept all those things in there. And I don't understand why the onus isn't on these new developers and these new developments to figure out how to do this without negatively impacting the people who have lived here for decades. It's not making the land unusable. We're asking them not to put roads through our neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Making sure this time, and with that, I will close the public hearing. I do want to, and I will look over to Anthony in just 1 second to make sure that I clarify again, because this came up the last time. The city doesn't and cannot control who is the property owner, just what they do with it, correct?
That is correct.
And there was some questions, and that's what we all went over before as the difference between general suburban and restricted suburban. With general suburban before, and that came up again before the entire commission, they could go technically above 800, almost up to 1,800 location or homes on that property. And that was a major concern of ours, and this has been a return to that to get to the restricted suburban, which I think is what we had gone over before. And if you could come up for just 1 second, and then I'll get to some questions from everyone else. What is the neighborhood that is already restricted suburban, and that corner over there?
That is Greens Prairie Reserve.
Okay, and so that is the same same zoning that we're looking for here, correct?
That is correct. It is a portion of Greens Prairie Reserve is zoned restricted suburban, and then another portion is zoned PDD with a base zoning of restricted suburban, but with modifications to allow for areas with a smaller lot size. Some of those lots are a minimum lot area of 4,600 square feet, and then other townhome areas with a minimum lot area of around 3,400 square feet.
What is the base zoning for the PDD over at, and I'm sorry, I know we asked this before, but I just want to get for clarification, the PDD, and I guess that's for Castlegate on across Greens Prairie Road there?
General suburban.
So that's general suburban over there. Okay, thank you. And I will open it up for any questions or discussion.
Mr. Chair? Hi.
Yes.
Jason Schubert, Transportation Planning Administrator. In the discussion this evening and many of the residents out here, I felt I needed to interject and provide a correction.
Thank you.
So there's residents from the Wood Lake subdivision that are concerned by traffic from this development going through their neighborhood. As you see on the screen in the proposed rezoning, this rezoning doesn't touch with the Wood Lake subdivision. There is an area that you can kind of see in the bottom border of the proposed zoning map is land outside the city. It is on the thoroughfare plan that the road will be extended eventually over to there. That's actually not part of this item. And in my looking up the TIA that was considered for this request, there is no traffic from this proposed development that goes on Wood Lake Drive at all. There's no connection. It actually wasn't in the TIA that way. I think what was misunderstood or confused was that the traffic in the TIA, the intersection of Wood Lake Drive and Greens Prairie Road was one of the intersections that were analyzed, and there are 62 cars that are in the afternoon rush hour that go into Wood Lake Drive. But that volume is their volume, is the development basically going home. There is no additional traffic from this neighborhood that goes on Wood Lake Drive. It's not connected. And that's just something that was misunderstood, and that was communicated in an email saying 62 cars. And that's just incorrect, and apologize for that.
No, thank you for adding that. Discussion, thoughts, questions?
Well, just one question about the traffic. So all of the traffic would exit onto Greens Prairie?
I can look up what the percentages, large percentages. I think there's another street connection, and obviously there's folks here from Greens Prairie Reserve. There's a connection there too. This development, as far as will be required to, at a certain stage, I think it's 300 plus homes, will be required to install a traffic signal on Greens Prairie Road at their connection to Greens Prairie Road. So yes, it will go out to Greens Prairie Road. There are some other smaller connections, but not to Wood Lake at all.
Thank you.
When this first came up, this is for those that were involved in that, was this positioned as a compromise?
No, it was not positioned as a compromise. We, the commission, wanted to vote to make it be restricted suburban, and correct me if I'm wrong, we could not based on how it was presented, and we just denied the proposal.
So you could have voted because there was a less denser zoning district. I think at the time, the applicant hadn't run the numbers on if
Okay.
it was viable for them or not. And so they wanted time to go do that, but wanted the item to move forward.
Okay, and so, sorry, thank you for that clarification, but yeah, this was. Trey?
I don't know, if it's the Jamie, I don't know if it's the Jason or Miss Macias, but basically I remember someone speaking about Arrington and Greens Prairie being worked on in the future.
Yes, I can provide information on that. So as part of Brazos County had a bond election in 2022. As part of that was $80 million of improvements for non-county roads around the county, and there's different areas. One of those was William D. Fitch between Highway 6 and Arrington Road in that area. And so that is part of a county bond funds if the amount exceeds $10 million. But the way that actually them and Fitch, obviously, is a TxDOT road. We're working with TxDOT, have looked at conceptual designs and improving traffic in that area. And so that's, I guess, our kind of response to the TIA and analyze that area is being handled through that project. And as far as our standard TIA guidance, does say that you're looking within an area that's within a mile of the development. That intersection happens to be beyond that. So it was outside, I guess, the boundary that was required for them to consider. But TxDOT and the county have a project still being worked on, and that will come forward at a future time.
Yes, sir. So with your professional expertise, do you believe that will alleviate some of the traffic situation that a lot of people have been complaining about?
That's the purpose of the project is improve that area, yes.
Thank you.
Aaron? Anything? Okay. That being said, like I said, I did the best I could to kind of clarify things both from tonight and previously. And with that, I will now move to the will of the commission.
I'll move to approve the rezoning request.
Second.
Presented.
We have a motion and a second. Does anyone have any further discussion on that? I will say, now that we do have that motion before, this is, oh, go ahead, Trey, sorry.
I would just like to say that we want housing in College Station so bad, we cannot keep denying houses coming to College Station. I would like for anybody to find me another space in College Station where we can put 800 houses. Okay, well, I would like anybody in College Station to find where we can put 800 houses before you ask anybody to deny something like this, because we do want houses in College Station.
Thank you very, very much. Decorum, please. And again, thank you for those comments. I will say also that this was another one of those spirited conversations that we had the last time we were up. And we actually listened as a commission, and I believe council did as well, to the concerns that the area surrounding this had, and the applicant and the developer went back and made some changes that we're asking for. And with that, I will now call the vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And that motion passes. Again, thank y'all very much for coming forward on that, and this is going to continue on to the council as well. The next agenda item, public hearing, presentation, discussion, and possible action regarding an ordinance amending Appendix A of the Unified Development Ordinance, Article 11, definitions, Section 11.2, defined terms, and Article 6, use regulations, Section 6.3.c, use table of the Code of Ordinances of the City of College Station, Texas, by amending certain sections related to shared housing. Ms. Macias is back.
Good evening, Commissioners. Robin Macias, Planning and Development Services. As you may remember, in September of last year, Senate Bill 1567 went into effect, which prohibits Texas cities from regulating how many people may live in a home based on their family status. And so in September, we amended the family definition and the use table to be in compliance with that Senate bill. So with the passing of this, the city can no longer regulate the shared housing use based on its current definition, since its current definition is based on the definition of family and occupancy. In November of last year, we presented to council several options on changes that could be made to the shared housing definition. Council directed staff to move forward with defining shared housing as a congregate living facility as defined in the International Building Code. So the proposed changes that you have before you today are to change the definition of shared housing to define it as a congregate living facility per the IBC, International Building Code, remove family from the definition, add that the bedrooms will be of a similar size, given that that is what we generally see in the plans for shared housing uses, and then change from a dwelling to saying a structure, and that's based on the definition of a congregate living facility in the IBC. And then when we made the changes in September to come into compliance with the bill, we removed shared housing from being a permitted use in all of our zoning districts. So this change would put that back. So they would be, shared housing use would be a permitted use in the middle housing multifamily, planned mixed use, R4 and R6 multifamily, Wolfpen Creek, and Northgate. Staff is recommending approval of these changes. It will be heard at the April 23rd City Council meeting. And I'm available for questions.
Questions from my left? To the right?
Robin, you said that this would change to say that bedrooms would be generally of the same size. How is that defined? Oh, when you say generally the same size, within 20%? You know, I've lived in houses where the master bedroom was double the size of any of the other bedrooms. How do you define generally the same size, just for clarity?
So when we look at a plan for shared housing, a shared housing use, the bedrooms are the same size. The building code doesn't define a primary bedroom, so we can't say a lack of primary bedroom. So we would say generally the bedrooms are the same size.
Right, but generally is kind of a mushy term. When you say generally,
I think it's mushy on purpose.
mushy on purpose?
Correct.
But we can't really enforce generally the same size, right? Because we don't have a definition of what generally the same size means.
Anthony, can you give us
Yeah,
some clarification?
so,
Thank you.
so we can, basically, the way that the entire, even what it was before, it was a list of criteria that we are looking for. So and the vague isn't the right word, but the more general it is, the more flexibility it gives to us as the administrator to actually call the duck a duck. Obviously, if someone comes in and there's a 10% difference between bedrooms, yeah, we're probably gonna know what that is. But basically, we're trying to identify with that particular clause is, hey, do you have a master bedroom or not? And basically yes or no. And so we're using all, the staff who look at building plans day in and day out, not 24/7, but they look at day in and day out. They're looking to see what their judgment calls, what does that look like? And so, yeah, it gives us flexibility to know at a staff level, make that decision. We're not trying to tie it down, because the second you say 20% difference between bedrooms, you're gonna get bedrooms all within 20%, try to do the same thing.
And for clarification, and can you go back to the list that this is allowed in? I don't want to, I'm hoping that we're not getting bucked. Like, this is shared housing that is only going to go into specific zoning, and if I'm understanding maybe where your question was coming from, we're not going to be worried about this in residential, general suburb, like where we're going to see typical single-family dwelling if I'm understanding your question.
I think that if this were put out to the general public, they would want to know what that looked like, and so they would want to be able to define what was single-family homes versus this particular designation. So, but I also understand the need for flexibility, and I appreciate the staff's discretion in this matter. I was just hoping for clarity for myself. If I had to explain it to somebody what it was, I don't know that I could explain what generally the same size was, but I understand if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. Thank you.
And it seems to me that that cow's already out of the barn, isn't it?
That is correct. When it was presented at a workshop in November, they directed staff to move forward with defining it as a congregate living facility. And these zoning districts are the same zoning districts that it was previously permitted in.
Mm-hmm.
All right, can I make a motion?
Well,
Go ahead.
just again, I'd like a clarification on this. Did the legislative act, did it remove the single-family use direction versus the designation of the definition of family? That the term single-family became relevant to the use of the building, of the home, versus the structure of the tenants. Help me understand how that's changed, if any.
So the Senate bill prohibited cities from regulating occupancy. So previously, the city had no more than 4 unrelated in a single-family structure. We changed the definition of family to be in compliance with that Senate bill. And then because the shared housing definition currently is based on occupancy of more than 4, we have to amend that in order to regulate where that use is allowed.
And just as for clarification, so this does not carry over into, how does this impact HOA restrictions?
It does not.
They're exempted, right?
That is correct. So the city does not enforce HOA or deed restrictions, and that if the HOA or deed has a occupancy limit, they would be the ones enforcing that.
So that would have no impact on
Correct.
either current or really future HOA developments?
Correct.
That they could advertise them as single family? Okay.
I'll just say this goes back to the very first days of me actually being a commissioner on this, of wanting, at least for this body, to be looking more at what is on a property instead of who is on a property. And I say that knowing that I also am not also the biggest fan of Austin telling the city what to do, but I just agree with this one in particular, that we are looking more of, again, what's on a property. That being said, I think we have a motion coming.
Yeah, I have a motion to approve.
Do we have a second? I'll second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much, Ms. Macias. Continue on with the agenda. 6.1, discussion of new development applications submitted to the city. Anybody have any questions on those? 6.2, presentation and discussion regarding update on items heard, an ordinance amending the College Station Comprehensive Plan by adopting the updated Economic Development Master Plan. That was a long conversation for us. Planning and Zoning Commission heard that item. We voted 4-3 to recommend approval. City Council heard it. I was there at that meeting as well, and they voted to approve it 7-0. Our upcoming meetings, Thursday, April 9th, City Council will be here, and yes, Anthony, I will be back for that. April 16th, we have a P&Z meeting. April 23rd is City Council, and then May the 7th is a P&Z meeting here. The Design Review Board met on March the 27th. Do we have an update on that? Because I was not at the meeting either.
Yes, so on March 27th, the Design Review Board met and approved the plans for Kraken's Revenge for our, they approved the alternative compliance for NRA standards for Kraken's Revenge mini golf.
Any thoughts or questions from that gentleman? All right.
No,
go ahead. Okay,
No, I got to say, I appreciate the staff bringing this forward. You know, as we're looking to make College Station a more family-friendly community, being able to have that kind of flexibility and allow these innovative developments to come through are greatly appreciated. They improve our offerings for families and family entertainment as we're moving away from just a bar district or just a college school. So I appreciate this. It is going to be on Highway 6, so it'll be highly visible. It'll be an attraction that you can see. And a lot of good questions were asked about the ongoing maintenance and upkeep of this, so that's not a beautiful thing to start with, but it ultimately becomes a blight later. So there was a robust discussion. The developer was there, answered those questions, and it seems like a reputable developer who's done this plenty. And so I'm excited to see that come to our town. So thank you for your work on that.
Thank you.
Thank y'all very much for that. Moving on, do we have any possible future agenda items that we want to discuss? Yes, sir.
Yes, I did notice at the last council meeting, Ms. Harvell brought up a thing about the trash. I don't know if that's our capacity or not, but I would want to know if we could make a plan to pass on to city council to maybe have some more enforcement within trash. My neighbors keep their trash out 24/7. They don't take the trash can back to behind the house like people usually did before our council got rid of finding them. And now, with the past couple of days being very windy and their trash being overfull, we just had trash flying all over our street. So I would, if possible, maybe bring it back to council where we could find some way to make sure people are taking care of their trash, especially if it's on the street.
I can touch base with the commissioner offline, and we can, that's more of a ministerial matter. We can solve that and talk about that separately.
Got you, thank you.
I do want to add, I think we pulled the commission on having a joint P&Z meeting with the city of Bryan. So we are going to move forward with the June 11th. It'll be they'll be hosting us this time. It's during the day. We'll send you guys some information on that, but just want to make sure you have it on your calendars for June 11th will be that joint P&Z.
Thank y'all very much for that. I know we talked about it in the planning and setting up stages for that, but if there is anything that I think that we know, that these two bodies, both planning and zoning for both cities, can really continue to put either put the guardrails on or take the guardrails off of what we're looking to do as a community. So Anthony, we do appreciate y'all continuing to indulge us for having these meetings. So I do think they do a lot of good, us hearing what they're doing, them hearing what we're doing, and looking at that to plan the direction that we're going. So thank y'all for that. Seeing nothing else.
Real quickly for Jace, we have a meeting for the active transportation plan, which will come forward to the commission at a later date. We'll do a workshop to kind of get you up to speed, but there'll be a public meeting on April 15th that the commission is certainly invited to in council, but I want to make sure the public's there. We'll have the finalization of the plan for their feedback and comments on as it goes forward through the rest of the process.
Any other updates? Seeing none, thank y'all very much. We're adjourned.